Hey everybody, welcome to another Guiding Hands video, and this will be part 1 of 2 videos covering energy flow, which is chapter 4.2 of the IB Biology curriculum. So, some basic information about energy flow is that most ecosystems rely on sunlight as an energy supply. Light energy is then converted into chemical energy via photosynthesis, and this chemical energy flows through the food chain as animals consume plants or one another. Another point to consider is that heat is energy that is lost from ecosystems. Let's first talk about energy sources. Most ecosystems rely on a supply of energy from sunlight. The light energy from the sun is then converted to chemical energy in plants and some bacteria by the process of photosynthesis. All green plants and some bacteria, which are photoautotrophic, use sunlight as a source of energy. This makes light the initial source of energy for almost all communities. As said before, light energy is absorbed by photoautotrophs and then converted into chemical energy via photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, as you can see on the right, is used to make organic compounds, for example, sugar or glucose, from inorganic sources like carbon dioxide. Heterotrophs then ingest these organic compounds in order to derive chemical energy in the form of ATP. Organic compounds ingested by heterotrophs are then broken down via cell respiration, and ATP is also produced and used to fuel metabolic processes. Next, let's talk about energy flow. Chemical energy in carbon compounds, or living organisms, flows through food chains by feeding. Energy enters most ecosystems as sunlight, as said before, which is then converted into chemical energy by producers, usually plants like trees or algae and kelp and water, by photosynthesis. Chemical energy is then stored in carbon compounds, such as organic molecules, and then transferred to heterotrophs, who feed on one another or plants. In order to talk about energy flow, we also need to talk about trophic levels. The position that an organism occupies within a feeding sequence is known as a trophic level. The producers always occupy the first trophic level in a feeding sequence, as can be seen here at trophic level 1. Primary consumers then feed on producers and hence occupy the second trophic levels. Further consumers, like the secondary and tertiary consumers, as can be seen in this table over here, may occupy higher trophic levels, like trophic level 3 and 4, which are higher than trophic level 2, which is where the primary consumer were. And we can see on the right here, there's a diagram of how producers, the energy flows from producers to primary consumers to secondary consumers and then tertiary consumers, and this is also how the trophic levels work. Finally, in this first part of the 2 videos that I'll be making to talk about energy flow, we will need to discuss food chains. A food chain shows the linear feeding relationship between species in a community. There can be many levels in a food chain, but the key idea is that energy goes from the producers to each level of the food chain until the apex predator, which is the animal at the top of the food chain. Arrows in food chains represent the transfer of energy and matter as one organism is eaten by another. In other words, the arrows point in the direction of energy flow in a food chain. The first organism in a food chain is always a producer, followed by any number of consumers, and that could be primary, secondary, or tertiary, etc., just different levels of consumers. One thing to always remember about food chains, however, is that there cannot be too many levels, as due to energy loss and only a small amount of energy being transferred from one level to the next, too many levels would result in not enough energy getting to the animals at the top of the food chain. For example, tiger mosquitoes here, as can be seen on the left, need to consume algae for energy. However, since they only get a certain amount of energy, the dragonfly would consume the mosquito, but would not receive as much energy as the tiger mosquito did from consuming the algae. As such, the dragonfly would have to consume a higher number of mosquitoes in order to get the same energy as the tiger mosquito did from consuming algae. And the same goes for the horned frog over here, who would have to consume many more dragonflies in order to get the same level of energy as the tiger mosquito did from eating the algae. That concludes the first part of the energy flow videos, which will be continued in part 2, where we'll look at energy loss, energy efficiency, as well as pyramids of energy. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video helped you or that you learned something from this video.